All right, let's dive into one of the greatest underdog stories of all time. We're talking about the epic, world-changing showdown between the colossal Persian Empire and a few scrappy Greek city-states. This is a clash that, believe it or not, completely shaped the world we live in today.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? I mean, how on earth did this happen? You've got this massive superpower on one side, an empire stretching from India all the way to the Mediterranean. And on the other, a bunch of small, independent, and frankly, often bickering city-states. How did they possibly pull this off?
And just look at this map. It really puts the scale of this mismatch into perspective. That huge purple area, that's the Persian Empire. It's gigantic. And that tiny little cluster of lights way over on the west, yeah, that's Greece. So you have to ask, what could possibly bring these two completely different worlds into such a massive conflict?
Well, it all kicked off with a rebellion. See, the Persians had already conquered a bunch of Greek cities in a place called Ionia. That's in modern-day Turkey. And let's just say the Ionians were not thrilled about their new management. So in 499 BC, they revolted. They asked their cousins back in mainland Greece for help, and one city answered the call in a huge way: Athens. Athenian soldiers sailed over and helped the Ionians march on the regional Persian capital of Sardis, and they burned it to the ground. For the Persian emperor, this was way more than an insult. It was an act of war he would never forget. Now, before we go any further, you gotta understand the Greeks' secret weapon. It was the hoplite. This wasn't some professional soldier. This was your average citizen, a farmer, a craftsman, who bought his own heavy bronze armor. And when these guys locked their shields together into a formation called the phalanx, they became this nearly indestructible human tank, an absolute wall of shields and spears. Okay, so you just don't burn down a Persian capital and get away with it. The Persian emperor, Darius the Great, was absolutely furious and started planning his revenge. And that revenge mission would lead to the very first major test of this conflict, the legendary Battle of Marathon. And I mean, Darius took this personally. To make sure he never, ever lost sight of his goal, he ordered a servant to stand behind him at every single dinner and whisper, "Master, remember the Athenians." Talk about holding a grudge. So in 490 BC, Darius makes his move. He sends this massive invasion fleet. We're talking 600 ships across the Aegean. They land on the plains of Marathon, just about 26 miles from a completely terrified and seemingly unprepared Athens. Facing this enormous army, the Athenian general Miltiades comes up with this totally wild, high-risk plan. He knew the Persians were strongest in their center, so he does something that sounds crazy. He makes his own center super thin, almost like bait. But he packs his best troops on the sides, on the flanks. The Persians charge, smash right through the weak middle as expected, and then snap, the trap closes. The strong Greek flanks swing in like a pair of pincers, surrounding and just crushing the Persian forces. The victory was absolutely stunning, and it gives us one of history's most famous stories. A messenger, Pheidippides, supposedly ran the entire 40 kilometers back to Athens without stopping. He bursts into the city, yells out, "Nikomen, we have won," and then collapses and dies from exhaustion. His incredible run, of course, is what inspired the modern marathon. Now, Marathon was a huge humiliation for Persia, but they were far from done. Oh no. 10 years later, Darius' son, Xerxes, comes back, and this time he's bringing an army bigger than anything the world had ever seen to finish the job. And this sets the stage for maybe the most famous last stand in all of history. The Greeks knew they couldn't face this horde in the open, so they picked a super narrow coastal pass called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, where the Persian numbers wouldn't matter as much.
but still, just wrap your head around these numbers. You've got about 7,000 Greeks, led by 300 elite Spartan warriors and their king, Leonidas, staring down a Persian army that was at least 10 times bigger.
But the Spartans, their spirit was just on another level. When Xerxes sent a message demanding they surrender their weapons, Leonidas shot back the famous reply, "Molon labe, come and get them." And when they were warned that the Persian arrows would fly so thick they'd block out the sun, another Spartan just shrugged and said, "Good, then we shall fight in the shade."
For 2 solid days, that tiny Greek force held the pass, causing horrific casualties. But their heroic stand wasn't ended by force. No, it was ended by betrayal. A local Greek named Ephialtes showed the Persians a secret mountain trail that let them get behind the Greek lines. Knowing they were trapped, Leonidas sent most of the army away to safety. But he, his 300 Spartans, and a few hundred other brave Greeks stayed behind to fight to the last man, buying precious time for the rest of Greece to prepare.
So, with the pass at Thermopylae lost, the road to Athens was wide open. The Persians marched in and burned the city to the ground. For the Greeks, it looked like it was all over. But the Athenian leader, a brilliant strategist named Themistocles, had one more ace up his sleeve. He knew this war wasn't going to be won on land anymore. It had to be won at sea.
And the key to his whole plan was the Greek warship, the trireme. Think of it like this. The big Persian galleys were like heavy cargo trucks, powerful but slow and clumsy. The Greek trireme, though, was like a sports car. It was smaller, faster, could turn on a dime, and it had a massive bronze ram on the front designed to punch through enemy holes. In a tight space, it was an absolute killer.
So here's where Themistocles pulls off one of the most brilliant bluffs in military history. He gets all the Greek ships together in the narrow straits of Salamis, where the Persian numbers would be useless. Then, to make sure the Persians would attack him there, he sends a fake traitor to Xerxes' camp with a secret message. The Greeks are panicking. They're trying to escape. If you attack now, you can trap them all.
And Xerxes fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. He sends his entire massive fleet charging into that narrow channel. It was absolute chaos. The big Persian ships got jammed up, couldn't maneuver, and started crashing into each other. Meanwhile, the nimble Greek triremes just zipped around them, ramming and sinking ship after ship. The result? A complete and utter catastrophe for the Persian navy. That victory at Salamis was the turning point. Xerxes was terrified that his army would be trapped in Greece now that his navy was wrecked, so he took most of his troops and headed for home. The war wasn't officially over, but the tide had turned for good. The next year, 479 BC, was all about mopping up. At the Battle of Plataea, a unified Greek army led by the Spartans absolutely crushed the Persian forces left in Greece. And on the very same day, the Greek navy hunted down and destroyed what was left of the Persian fleet at Mycale. The Great Persian invasion was finally over. So why do we still talk about this today? What's the big deal? Well, this victory did more than just save Greece. It allowed Greek culture, democracy, philosophy, and art to survive and explode in what we now call the Golden Age of Athens. Basically, all the stuff that forms the foundation of Western civilization was allowed to flourish because of this victory. Our world would look completely different without it. But here's the tragic twist in the story. The amazing unity that saved Greece from the Persians, it couldn't save the Greeks from themselves. As soon as that common enemy was gone, the old rivalries, especially between the two head honchos, Athens and Sparta, came roaring back.
In fact, within about 50 years, they'd be fighting each other in a horrible, drawn-out conflict called the Peloponnesian War that would leave all of Greece shattered. It's a powerful lesson that sometimes winning the war is the easy part, and it leaves us with this huge, fascinating question to think about. What if the Persians had won? What would our world even look like today?